Can't decide and torn between a romantic, comedy, action, or an indie film to watch for the weekend? Well. Golden State Media Concepts Movie Podcast is your ultimate guide to the latest movies. Join us as we dissect the latest on the blockbusters. It's the Golden State Media Concepts Movie Podcast.
Hello and welcome to the GSMC Movie Podcast, brought to you by the GSMC Podcast Network. I am your host, Sarah, and I am excited to be with you to talk about movie reviews and movie news and something else that starts with movie and rhymes with those other two things. Movie clues? I don't know. At any rate, I am happy to be here with you to talk about movies. And as you see from the title, I will be reviewing the Netflix movie, Always Be My Maybe. This movie, as I said, is on Netflix. It's a Netflix original. It stars Ali Wong as Sasha Tran, Randall Park as Marcus Kim. Those are the two main characters. It also stars James Sato as Marcus's dad, and Michelle Buteau as Veronica, Sasha's friend and personal assistant. It is, directed by, oh my goodness, Khan, I'm so sorry, I just butchered that, and was written by Michael Golomko Randall Park. And as I said, it's available on Netflix. And let me first just say, it's a romantic comedy, and I miss romantic comedies. They have gone by the wayside for a long time, and they seem to be making a little bit of a comeback, which makes me absolutely happy. I love romantic comedies. I saw this one as I was scrolling through Netflix, and the trailer didn't really suck me in. It looked okay. It was much better than the trailer led me to believe, which is a little bit of a backhanded compliment. So Sasha and Marcus are childhood friends. They live next door to each other. Sasha's parents are something of workaholics. They're rarely home, and so Sasha spends a lot of time with Marcus and his family. Marcus's mom teaches her to cook. She's sort of scooped into the family, and she and Marcus are childhood friends and friends all through high school. This isn't really a spoiler because it happens very early in the film and is kind of the catalyst. So when they are about 18, Marcus's mom dies suddenly. This leads Marcus and Sasha to have grief sex, as sometimes happens, especially in romantic comedies. And that leads to awkwardness and a giant fight and them going their separate ways and no longer speaking to each other. Sasha goes out into the world and becomes a world-renowned, maybe not world-renowned, but definitely renowned chef. She's opening her own restaurants. She is engaged to a man named Brandon, who is played by Daniel Day Kim. I love Daniel Day Kim, but he's not the nicest of guys in this movie. And Marcus grows up, continues living with his dad, goes into the family business, still is part of the same band that he was playing with in high school. He doesn't seem like he's really got his stuff together, but he's doing okay. And then, of course, fate or the script brings Sasha back to San Francisco. She's been in New York, and she's opening a new restaurant, and lo and behold, surprise, surprise, she runs into Marcus. She doesn't really run into Marcus. Veronica, her assistant, calls Marcus and his dad Harry to come to the house that Sasha's renting to work on the air conditioning. That's what they do there in heating and air. And then things go from there, and they get reconnected, and they start being involved in each other's lives and meeting Marcus's girlfriend. And at this point, Brandon, who is played by Daniel Day Kim, has gone to India. He is engaged to Sasha, but he decides that he needs to travel and they need to spend some time apart before they get married to make sure that they are really ready for marriage and compatible. So off he goes. She goes to San Francisco, reconnects with Marcus. They rekindle their friendship, and everything goes from there. It's very cute. It's very sweet. Marcus he smokes a lot of weed, which wasn't my favorite part of the movie, but he smokes a lot of weed. Sasha is way too driven and focused, and they have kind of conflicting personality types at this point in their lives, but they do reconnect. And okay, here's my favorite part of the movie. Keanu Reeves is in this movie as himself, and I'm not going to tell you what happens with him, but it is hilarious. He is very willing to laugh at himself and play this ridiculous character. At one point, Marcus's character says, Keanu Reeves is a word that I can't say on the podcast, but it starts with a D, and he says it really loud. And that's the role that Keanu Reeves is playing as Keanu Reeves. He is kind of a word that I won't say on the podcast. But he made me laugh so hard. That was my favorite part of a very cute, very sweet movie. But that's what made me laugh the hardest, was Keanu Reeves playing himself in this very, I already said sweet romantic comedy, but I just said it again. It is a lovely romantic comedy. It was released, on May 31st of this year, and it currently has 6.9 stars on Netflix, which, that's not bad, although now I'm hearing my husband's voice in my head who would say 6.9, that's a 69%, that's a D+. Maybe I don't know if we're grading on a curve, but okay, a D+ doesn't sound that great, but still 6.9 stars out of 10, it doesn't sound that bad to me, at any rate. In terms of the director, she has been a writer and TV producer for years. She has worked on American Dad and Fresh Off the Boat, but now she makes her directorial debut in this movie. As far as the writing goes, I read a quote from Ali Wong in an article on Variety where she says, I made Netflix spend all this money on this movie just so that, as a 37-year-old mother of two, I could kiss Daniel Day Kim and Keanu Reeves. That was her joke. But that makes me kind of sad for Randall Park. She doesn't put him in there. She didn't want to kiss him. But he actually commended her as saying she's a genius. So as I mentioned earlier, Wong and Park co-wrote as well as star in Always Be My Maybe. The director talked a little bit about, she seconded the genius part. She says, what a genius writer. She was like, I'm going to write this for me, Randall, Daniel Day Kim, and Keanu Reeves. And she goes on to say, Keanu Reeves, was sort of an ideal scenario. You're like, oh, this is probably never going to happen, but here it is. And then he got sent the script and he responded, and we sat down with him and he had some great thoughts on the character. So we revised it, sent it back to him. He was like, absolutely. She continued, we got him in this little window. I think he was wrapping John Wick in New York, and then he was about to go to Morocco or something. So we got him for this short time. The fact that he was willing to do it when he could have gotten to sleep for 5 days is amazing. Also, Mariah Carey voiced her approval. The title, of course, is a play on her 1995 hit, Always Be My Baby. I was actually singing along to that during the credits when I realized, oh, that's what this song is. Yeah, Always Be My Baby. And then I laughed and realized that I'm a dork and kind of an idiot, but whatever. At any rate, as I mentioned, I have missed romantic comedies, so I very much enjoyed this movie. It's sweet, it's cute, it's not groundbreaking, and it's kind of predictable in its romantic comedy-ness, which is kind of why I tune into romantic comedies, to be frank. But it is kind of groundbreaking because it has two Asian Americans in romantic leads. That doesn't happen very often. You might get one, but not often two. And then the cast itself is very diverse. There, Veronica, who plays the friend / personal assistant, is mixed, and she is a lesbian. She has a partner. There are, of course, Marcus and Sasha's parents who are Asian, and lots of just the cast is very diverse, and I appreciated that. You don't often see a movie like this with this type of cast, so I commend it for that. That is awesome, because representation matters, as I keep saying on every podcast that I seem to be on. Representation matters, and it was nice to see people of color on the screen in main roles, acting, writing, directing, etc. So we are going to take our first break of the podcast, and when we come back, we'll be turning our attention to some movie news. So stay tuned. You're listening to the GSMC Movie Podcast, and I will be right back.
Want to know the latest and hottest music hitting the airwaves? Don't be left out. Listen to the Golden State Media Concepts Music Podcast. Keith keeps you on the loop with everything you need to know from pop, rock, hip-hop, and the top 40. And we'll throw in news of your favorite artists, concert and tour dates, and so much more. Listen no further, because this is the gold standard in music podcast.
Welcome back to the GSMC Movie Podcast. Before the break, we were talking about the movie Always Be My Maybe, and I said we would turn to some movie news now, which we are doing. Although I do want to, it's not exactly news, but it is entertaining, at least to me, and that is that Netflix has released, not released, but shared a blooper reel. They shared it on Twitter, and it says "Always Be My Maybe bloopers. You're welcome." And you know they're very blooper like. The one though that there was a whole article written about it. Not a long article, but an article, and that is the blooper with Keanu Reeves. So he is sitting with Ali Wong's character Sasha, and he's saying something about, you know, when I was on speed and I was under the bus and something got my eye, and then he just stands up, walks away, and goes, "Nope, I'm not doing it." So he's like, "No, I'm not selling it well," but he is he rejects the speed joke. So yeah, that was not in the movie. It's really just the cuteness of his facial expression as he says it. So don't take my word for it. Go watch the blooper reel. It's not a reel. It's blooper clips. It's only 1.5 minutes long, so it's not going to take a huge chunk out of your day, honestly. More Keanu Reeves adjacent news at any rate, and that is, I'm sure you've heard by now that Bill and Ted 3 is happening. They are casting. They have cast quite a few of the roles. It is called Bill and Ted Face the Music. They have now added Anthony Carrigan to the cast as the main villain. In case you have not heard about this movie, it is coming 30 years after the release of the original Bill and Ted's Excellent Adventure. Man, that makes me feel old. Face the Music revisits the characters of Bill S. Preston Esquire, who is played by Alex Winter, and Ted Theodore Logan, who of course is played by Keanu Reeves, as the one-time slackers have grown up to become middle-aged family men enduring the grind of normal life. I cannot imagine those two as middle-aged family men. I mean, I can, but I also can't. The original movie and its sequel, if you have not seen them, the sequel is called Bill and Ted's Bogus Journey, revealed Bill and Ted's destiny as the rock and rolling saviors of the universe. But when Face the Music begins, the pair still have not written one song that will allow them to fulfill that destiny. Wow, 30 years, guys. So Bill and Ted must team up with their own daughters to once again travel back in time, this time in search of the greatest song ever written. Let's see. The daughters are played by Samara Weaving and Bridget Lundy Payne, and they are Thea or Taya, I'm not sure how it's being pronounced, and Billy, the daughters of Bill and Ted. I'm guessing Billy is Bill's daughter and Taya is Ted's daughter, unless they named them after each other. And let's see, together with a returning William Sadler as Bill and Ted's eternal slave, Death. Oh, I'd kind of forgotten about Death, actually. Anyway, so as I mentioned earlier, they now have added the main villain of the piece, and that is actor Anthony Character, who you may know from Gotham. Specifics on Kerrigan's character are being kept under wraps for now, but he is being described as Bill and Ted's relentless adversary. Production on the film has already gotten underway, as was recently revealed by Alex Winter, and we'll see how it goes. I'm both excited and horrified. Excitedly horrified, horrifiedly excited. This was a movie of my teenage years and made me laugh because it was so stupid, and I look forward to the stupid nature of, I'm sure, this movie. Hopefully it will still be that same level of stupid, not like, how to say this, not, a kind of a campy, ridiculous, not like a caricature of itself stupid, if that makes any sense. Reboots or remakes or all of those things can go wrong at times, and I hope that this one is not that. But hey, we shall see, and I'm sure I will watch it, because why not? Moving on to other non-Keanu Reeves related news, but still Netflix related news, and that is that Denzel Washington is producing a Netflix film starring Chadwick Boseman and Viola Davis. He is producing a film adaptation of Ma Rainey's Black Bottom. This is based on August Wilson's award-winning Broadway play. The feature adaptation serves as a reunion for Washington and Davis, who previously worked together on the 2010 Broadway revival of Wilson's Fences, as well as the 2016 Oscar-winning film of the same name. Ma Rainey's Black Bottom was released on the stage in 1984, and the story follows Ma Rainey, one of the earliest professional African-American blues singers, who was dubbed Queen of the Blues. Taking place in a recording studio in Chicago circa 1927, the story dives into issues such as race, art, and religion when Ma Rainey's band members Cutler, Toledo, Slow Drag, and Levy gather to record. Tensions begin to boil in the studio between Ma Rainey, her white producer, and the bandmates, as the underlying issue of white producers exploiting black recording artists comes to a head. Ma Rainey's Black Bottom was revived in 2003 and featured Whoopi Goldberg in the leading role. The play was one of Wilson's century cycle plays, 10 plays set in a different decade to depict the black experience of each decade. So now it is coming to Netflix, and Washington's Passion Project, it's being called, has been in the works for a while. It was originally set to go to HBO, but now it has moved to Netflix and added Davis, obviously, and Boseman to the cast. Davis has been tapped to play the title character, and she is being joined by, of course, Chadwick Boseman, along with Coleman Domingo from Fear the Walking Dead, and Michael Potts, who is on True Detective. I would assume, it doesn't mention this specifically, but I would assume that they are playing the band members. Let's see, it is being helmed by director George C. Wolfe, and it will begin filming next month in Pittsburgh. So looking forward to that coming to Netflix. I'm always fascinated with plays that are adapted then for the screen, because it's a very different process of something that only takes place on one stage then being expanded to a film that can have obviously multiple locations, and there's just a lot more that you can do on film as opposed to stage, but the limitations, that's not even the word I'm looking for. Actually, it is. The limitations of stage can have positive effects and be a really interesting way to tell a story. At any rate, we are going to take our second break of the podcast, and when we come back, a few more movie news stories. So stay tuned. You're listening to the GSMC Movie Podcast, and I will be right back.
Tired of searching the vast jungle of podcasts? Now listen close and hear this out. There's a podcast network that covers just about everything that you've been searching. Hey! The Golden State Media Concepts Podcast Network is here. Nothing less than a podcast bliss with endless hours of podcast coverage. From news, sports, music, fashion, cooking, entertainment, fantasy, football, and so much more. So stop lurking around and go straight out to the Golden State Media Concepts Podcast Network. Guaranteed to fill that podcast itch. Whatever it may be. Visit us at www.gsmcpodcast.com. Follow us on Facebook and Twitter, and download us on iTunes, SoundCloud, and Google Play.
Welcome back to the GSMC Movie Podcast. This next story is an example of kind of clickbait because it is a headline that says Batman actor Robert Pattinson drops out of movie due to scheduling conflict. Now, when you hear that, what do you think? Well, Batman actor Robert Pattinson is dropping out of Batman because of a scheduling conflict? Yeah, that's kind of how it sounds. And in fact, I saw comments on the article that were like, oh my gosh, he's not going to be in the movie, etc. There clearly people did not read the article because this says that due to scheduling conflicts, he has dropped out of one upcoming project, and that is that he will no longer appear in Joanna Hoggy's highly anticipated sequel to The Souvenir. It was set to start filming next month, which conflicts with Pattinson's filming schedule on Christopher Nolan's mysterious Tenet film. So he clearly has a lot on his plate right now, but and that is newsworthy that he is dropping out of this film, but it just made me laugh that's the way the headline was, because I'm sure people are going to click on that thinking that he's dropping out of Batman as opposed to dropping out of this other film that they may or may not care about, which is terrible to say, but yeah, you're going to get more people to click on a Batman related story generally. So at any rate, he is not dropping out of Batman, at least not that I know of, not according to this clickbaity article that got me to click on it so I could tell you about it. At any rate, just goes to show, don't just assume from reading a headline. Go to the actual article, use your brain, do your thinking, all that good stuff. In other movie news, Ron Howard is directing his first animated movie, which is cool. I love Ron Howard. I loved him as Richie Cunningham, but I also love him as a director. He just seems like a really cool guy. But he is going to direct his first animated film, which is not too surprising. I mean, it's more surprising that he hasn't done this type of film because he takes on a lot of challenges. He doesn't like to do what is expected or do what may be conventional. He's always taken risks and liked to direct different types of films. He branches out into different genres, but now he is taking on this challenge of animation, which he has not done. According to Variety, he is now going to direct an animated film through his production company Imagine Entertainment. The Oscar-winning director will take on an animated adaptation of the Florence Perry Heidi children's novel The Shrinking of Treehorn. The book was originally released in 1971 and contains illustrations from iconic American artist Edward Gorey. The plot of The Shrinking of Treehorn involves a young boy called Treehorn who begins shrinking one day for reasons never fully explicitly defined. With each passing day, he grows smaller and unable to reach the candy he'd previously hidden. His parents, teachers, and friends take little notice of his shrinking until later in the story. It doesn't sound like much to go on for a feature-length film. Actually, it sounds like lots to go on to me for a feature-length film. But, of course, films have been made from far shorter books with fewer plot points. That's just how it works. So, sounds intriguing to me. I like Ron Howard as a director, so I'm sure he will do a fine job directing this. He also has said recently that a Willow sequel is being discussed. This, after I talked about this movie last week, makes me go, oh, my father must know this news. This actually is news from May, but I hadn't seen it yet. And that would be interesting. In an interview with Comic Book, Howard mentioned that despite there being no official confirmation, a sequel to Willow is being considered. He said that there's a little talk of Willow, though he doesn't want to give away too much. He also added that if a film did ever get the go-ahead, it wouldn't necessarily be a direct sequel to the original movie, but a spin-off of sorts, following a grown-up version of Elora Danan. That's the baby in the original movie, who would now be like 30, 40? I'm not even going to do the math. That being said, though, the character of Willow would have to be significantly involved. He even went on to explain that Willow doubled as a form of inspiration for Solo. He was talking about this during the promoting Solo, while it was in production. Despite existing in two very different universes, he explained there were certain scenes, elements, and even characters that drew parallels between both movies. Not only was the humor around some of the action in Willow something that Howard injected into Solo, but there was a character with traits similar to Val Kilmer's cocky Mad Mardigan, though he didn't specify which Solo character to whom he was referring. Interesting. I will definitely be passing this news along to my father, and I'm sure he will be very excited because, as I mentioned on last week's episode, he loves that movie. He watches it a very lot. He watches it all the time. I think I need to go to bed. He watches it a lot. One more story of upcoming movie news, and that is that Little Women is being adapted by Greta Gerwig. There are some new photos showing the cast of this new adaptation. It's introducing us to a new version, of course, of the March family. Louisa May Alcott's novel Little Women was an immediate success when it was published in 1868 and has since been adapted to film, television, and theater multiple times, each version with a unique touch. You may have varying opinions on all of those different versions and their own unique touches. The story is set in 1860s Massachusetts. It centers on the March women, Meg, Jo, Beth, and Amy, and of course their mom, and their passage from childhood to womanhood. It also touches on themes like family, love, grief, and gender roles. Back in 2016, Greta Gerwig was hired to rewrite the script for a new adaptation, and then was chosen as director in 2018. The cast is full of apparently familiar faces, and the first batch of photos is now out, so we can see them in character. Vanity Fair shared the first photos from Gerwig's take on Little Women, as well as some insight on the creative process for this new version. The new March sisters are Emma Watson, yay, who plays Meg, Saoirse Ronan, who plays Jo, Eliza Scanlon, Beth, and Florence Pugh, who plays Amy. Laura Dern is their mother, Marmee, and Meryl Streep as their rich Aunt March. Also part of the cast is Timothée Chalamet, who plays Theodore Laurie Lawrence, and the March's neighbor who quickly forms a friendship with Jo, and that's a whole, sisters attraction, blah, blah, blah. It's been out since the 1800s. It can't be a spoiler that Jo is in love with Laurie but doesn't end up with Laurie. She ends up with someone else, and Laurie ends up with someone else. It's all very complicated, except that it's not really that complicated. So the look of this version is very different from some of the other versions, especially from the last film adaptation of the novel, which was directed by Gillian Armstrong back in 1994. Again, dang, I feel old. That one starred Winona Ryder, Susan Sarandon, and Christian Bale. Armstrong's color palette was warmer, with a lot of brown and orange tones, while Gerwig's color scheme leans more towards softer colors. And yes, you can definitely see that in the picture. The coloring is different. Gerwig relied on paintings from the era to bring a different look to this version. She's also shared that this film feels like an autobiography, explaining, when you live through a book, it almost becomes the landscape of your inner life. It becomes part of you in a profound way. She spoke about the relationship and dynamic between Joe and Laurie, saying, in some ways, they are each other's twins. Something we can see in one of the photos above, with Joe wearing items of clothing that are typically labeled, for men. So they are trying to bring a much deeper look at Little Women than the versions we've seen before, with a better understanding of the roles these characters had in that era and how they mirror some social issues that are still present to this day. They also paid attention to the smallest details. So we have a lot to look forward to with this new adaptation. I will definitely be watching this. I love Little Women, and I am always fascinated to see how it is adapted. The pictures are beautiful, and it definitely has a different look to it than the one that came out in 1994. And I love Emma Watson, so I'm excited to see her in this role. I think she will be wonderful. So, and Saoirse, I know I'm saying her name wrong, Ronan is also a wonderful actress. So, again, I'm looking forward to this, and interested to see how it goes and what people think of it. If you are a fan of Little Women, I would love to hear your thoughts. Did you like the 1994 version? Is there another version that you liked better? Do you like the book? How do you think the adaptations have gone? Etc., etc. So many questions. So hit me up and let me know what you think. In the meantime, it is time to wrap up this episode of the GSMC Movie Podcast. Please join me again next week when we will be talking about some more movie reviews and movie news and movie hues. I'll stop. I promise I won't continue to make that joke, but I had to do it just to bring this podcast full circle. Hope you're having a great day and you have a great weekend. Thanks.
You've been listening to the Golden State Media Concepts Movie Podcast, part of the Golden State Media Concepts Podcast Network. You can find this show and others like it at www.gsmcpodcast.com. Download our podcast on iTunes, Stitcher, SoundCloud, and Google Play. Just type in GSMC to find all the shows from the Golden State Media Concepts Podcast Network, from movies to music, from sports to entertainment, and even weird news. You can also follow us on Twitter and on Facebook. Thank you, and we hope you have enjoyed today's program.